Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And good evening, everybody. It's another night here in the Critical Blast Caverns, where we talk about lots of stuff. Most of the time, we're talking about making comic books with the people who actually go out and do it. I sit here and I read them. That's my job. So sometimes I tell you what I think about them, but we'll do that sometime later. Tonight, we have two guests on the stream, the Mole and the Monk, and they're going to talk to us tonight about Lily and Wepwawet, or is it Wepwawet?
Wepwawet.
Wepwawet. I'm going to be honest with you. Every time I read the title, I start going, a Wepwawet, a Wepwawet, a Wepwawet, a Wepwawet. I can't hit the falsetto high for The Lion Sleeps Tonight, but and you're all welcome for that.
Thank you.
So how are you guys doing tonight? Good to see you.
Great.
Doing well.
Did I hear something from the monk? The silent monk?
Faintly.
I think we're going to hold out hope that tonight we may actually get an appearance from the monk. He may pull back the hood. Show the tonsor and and illustrate for us here. So I'm liking what I'm seeing with Lily and Wepwawet. I don't know what Wepwawet is, but I know what Lily is, and she's got some very strong Budroot cave girl vibes going on for her, and I love some Budroot cave girl. So I don't know. We want to just dive right in and talk about who she is and what the book is, or you just want to talk like comics and the news and everything else first, and people show up. I mean,
I suppose no. Let's just dive in. This is a really long story.
Okay, I like long stories.
Lily and Wepwawet, it all kind of goes back to the very beginning. Whenever I started to, want to do comics, I was like 5th grade, and my friends, we all had this dream. We were going to make a cartoon or some deal and get it on TV, some deal. I forget what it was. It was like there was a rumor that I think that Tiny Toons was created by kids, like they sent in a submission and then they made it. That was not true, but we believed it. And so we started. So they had me. Well, I was never like a little cartoon cat. So I, of course, go into like superheroes, which was totally off base of what the idea was. But I created Wepwawet, but his name was Wolfman. He was just a ripoff of Batman at the time. And that school year coming past, everybody moved on to other things except for me. I was like, no, there's something here. So since 5th grade, I've been regurgitating this character. But then in my teen years, emo wasn't a thing back then, but it was like that idea. I read The Crow, and that was,
Then you went emo on us, yeah.
Yeah, that comic changed everything for me. And at that time, it was Ghost World and The Crow, the Max. I mean, all these amazing comics that were looking really deep into things. And that just blew my mind. And I ditched, kind of the mainstream color comics and all this and moved on into that stuff. And so Wolfman then became Wepwawet, and he was a very Crow-like character for a while, where it was vengeance or whatever. But the older I got, the more my mind could think up bigger ideas. And I got hundreds of pages. I've been writing this character this whole time. And in high school, I wrote a really disturbing, weird deal, and it was Wepwawet. But he, it just, it really the Max. Where the Max, you think you know what's going on, but then he keeps straying off.
Yeah, it's getting weird.
Right, and that was the original idea, and it all started with Wepwawet. He was seeking vengeance for this girl Lily, who was dead, and that's all you see of her, is she's this body. You never see her alive in the original comic, and I think it's early 2000s, maybe 2005 or something like that. It was published in I want to say as Pendulum number 5, this little fanzine from Colorado. And that would be, technically the first appearance of Lily and Wepwawet. She's just a carcass, but he's in it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, 6 or 7 pages. I'd written 100, but I just got those 5 pages, and then it went defunct, like right after that. So I never even got a part number 2.
So did you draw those pages, or was it just a text story?
Oh yeah, it was drawn.
Okay.
And I have 100 pages. That is the original Wepwawet on 8.5 by 11 photocopy paper, and which still I'm all digital now, but I've always drawn on. When I went fancy, I went to a 11 by 17 photocopy paper.
Ooh,
but
big time.
But I did that 100-page deal, and then over the years I just kind of moved on. I always had the character in the back of my head of Wepwawet mainly, and when I started, I'd read like some very select few Batgirl, and then like Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor's Power Girl, and I was like, man, I felt something about like a female superheroes that I don't really see. I always felt like they were Superman but a woman, and I was like, that's not as interesting to me, like Wonder Woman and stuff like that, where they're just being coincidentally are women, and I think it's a little bit of that, but it's not entirely that all my characters just happen to be women. But I think that my own insecurities, I feel, translate better into that, maybe. I think people might care more for a female character with those insecurities, whereas a dude, they just be like, whoa, what a loser. So,
yeah, it's okay to express vulnerability, I think, with a female character. At least when I say it's okay, I mean people accept that more. Whether or not it's okay or not is up to individual interpretation.
And sure, there's a thing where you say, well, society should, but they don't, and I'm trying to make money here. So
exactly.
But also, I never thought about it. It's just, it feels more natural for some odd reason. Like everything in my head seems to translate better through those characters. And so that's where Kira, and she started as Protest Girl, is actually kind of mockery. It was mocking and protesting. Now, this was 20 years ago. Everything I write now seems like, because I had someone reviewed Saving the World #2, and they were like, was this commentary? It's like, no, I'm just, you ever talk to someone and you say the wrong thing accidentally all the time?
Sure.
I'm like that, but writing. I write something and I don't mean it to mean anything, but boy, even to me, I'm like, it seems like I'm saying something, but my things I'm saying are usually different than, look a little deeper than the surface. But it was Protest Girl, and the idea was she protested bad guys, like supervillains. So these are like mass murders, and she'd go outside in a superhero suit that looked a lot like Kira, and she would protest these bad guys. And then they would send someone out to tell her to leave, and she had weapons like the burning bra of justice and stuff, and she would horrendously assault them violently. And so she was hyper violent whenever things.
So she's like outside their secret lair with a bullhorn and a sign.
Exactly. And I wrote probably a 10 or 15 page story of Protest Girl, and you see like posters in the background in Saving the World #1 and 2. That's Protest Girl, and at some point I'm going to do a comic. I've wanted to for a while, but then I wanted to take it more seriously. I had bigger ideas because I read Power Girl, and they had I haven't really I stopped reading mainstream comics like in '93, or like Batman I read then, but like Nightfall and then Night Quest and all that stuff. And I kind of got burned out of everybody like a superhero dies and comes back. I'm like, this is dumb. And so I didn't like it. And then when I started reading The Crow and Ghost World and all these types of things, I was like, man, comics can actually be a lot better than what like DC and Marvel are doing. And then, reading European comics and stuff like that I mainly picked up through heavy metal. They imported a lot of that stuff. And I was like, well, I mean, these illustrators, they're beyond. Illustrators in Europe from the 70s and 80s blew away anything that's ever happened in, American sequential art. And so, all that stuff just opened my mind to what it could be. And it's ironic that I went to the R. Crumb type thing. I wanted to do a lot of satire, and I did a little bit of that. 2008, earlier, 2006, a little after I got that one thing, I started to publish my own comics. And it was more satire. And there was some weird Wepwawet style stuff that had evolved from that, but is so far different. And nobody liked it, though. Because it probably would have been popular in 1978, but I'm always like one step out of sync with the rest of the world.
Man, ahead of your time.
Something like that. Or behind, I don't know. But so that's when, I decided I wanted to do superheroes, but from my position of looking at all that 60s to 90s underground comics, they're you look at what I can't remember the guy's name now, Peter Beige or something, but Hate and Terry Moore's
Strangers in Paradise.
Yeah. All this amazing stuff. And I wanted to look at superheroes from that direction. And so that's where Saving the World came from. And I wanted to build a superhero universe, so I just started taking all these ideas. I had tons of scripts for comics and just kind of funneling them into one world. And that's how that all took off. Coincidences and crazy things happen. Like Tony Tuthill, he was published in he had a story in that Pendulum #5 that way back when, but I never talked to those guys. I submitted it. It got printed. They sent me, like a copy of it.
Right.
That's all I ever heard.
And how it works.
And so I've tried to track him down for the past 5 years on Facebook and stuff. Never heard nothing. I just heard from him last month. And he did a sketch for Lily and Wepwawet. So to kind of tie it all back around to where, and he'd been kind of out of it doing different things. And now is kind of thinking about getting back into comics and stuff like that. But
never a better time for it than now.
Yeah. So he has a pinup that's in there. So that's kind of cool to bring it all around. And then one of easily my biggest inspiration for not just Saving the World, but how I'm handling everything business-wise with Tonic Comics and everything is Mirage Studios with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Sure.
Because, beliefs, a writer can't not write about their beliefs. It just doesn't work that way. It happens. You can try really hard not to. It just, your characters will behave in certain ways. And so what I liked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was that weird mix of everything. That it's super absurd on one hand, but there's issues that almost bring you to tears, just this really emotional impact. It makes me think of issue 28, where it's not about anything. It's kind of like the Seinfeld issue of Ninja Turtles. And it's just the Ninja Turtles and April and Casey, and there's this dying merwoman, and then there's mermen, and they're all fighting and all this, and then come to find out it's the mermen are terrified because this merwoman represents the end. If she dies, everything's ruined, and they try to save her and they can't. And she looks at the Ninja Turtles though, and there's this emotional thing that it hit me pretty hard, and the art was beautiful, and it was but the idea being, now it was actually an environmental type thing. It was from '86 or so, which
Right.
was, environment was even bigger deal back then.
Hot topic then, yeah.
Yeah, because the acid rain. But it was that the Ninja Turtles, they will never have children. They are the end. When they pass away, there is no more. It was very emotional deal. But
that was way before Lisa.
yeah, exactly. And that really, those comics really impacted me. But even at just how Eastman and Laird brought in all this talent, that's unheard of. They're the only ones that I know of. Indie, traditionally, like Strangers in Paradise is Terry Moore. That's it.
Yeah. That's
indie. Generally indie. Well, no, it's indie underground. It's kind of a separate thing. But that creator artist thing, Ghost World was just him by himself. And I like that. And I did that for a long time. But it's very lonely. And you get this very tunnel vision. It's just you. Ninja Turtles, they brought in anybody. They are hiring guys. There was inkers and all this stuff producing a very indie underground comic, and I love that deal. So anyways, it was always a big inspiration, and I got in contact with I was just going to get one art piece of art for Lily and Wepwawet, and I started talking to Jim Lawson, who drew almost all of them. I mean, he started in the issue of 11 or 12 penciling TMNT.
Right.
And did most of them. They had guests come and go, but he primarily, all the major storylines, certainly, because he did the Return to New York and City at War and stuff. And then he did all of Volume 2 and all of Volume 4. Anyways, and I just started emailing him and stuff, and I was kind of like not wanting to, be too forward. But me and him were just talking, and I'm sending him comics and stuff. He read them, he liked them and stuff like that, and he was like, "Oh no, let's do this." So he did a pinup, but then I had him do a 3-page short for Saving the World that's in Lily and Wepwawet, because I knew I have a lot of Saving the World fans. I didn't know how much they would follow me with Lily and Wepwawet is a spinoff, but I'm being rather precocious thinking people will buy a spinoff, which they did, so it's fine. Yep. But there's some Saving the World, so the fans of Saving the World, they get a little 3-page story that I wrote and Jim Lawson drew. And then he's doing half of Saving the World number 3. So, but it's a giant issue. It wasn't planned to be, but I had 2 scripts, and I really wanted Jim Lawson to get in on like a full deal. So he's doing an 18-page comic, and then I'm doing, it'll probably be like a 25 to 30. So it'll be like a 50-some page issue.
Now, for this comic, though, one of the people that you did get to do some artwork is in the avatar to the side of you here. And now, how did you hook up with the Monk? And Monk, chime in anytime you want.
Yeah, Monk. So Monk drew a picture of Batgirl, and this is the best. I'm a image collector. So like, if I like a character, I want to find the best art of it. And I've always felt Batgirl was the most neglected. Like, it never felt right. Like, art so often just doesn't feel right to me. And I came across him. I came across his sketch they posted on Twitter, and I was like, "That's perfect." And it was kind of a combination of comic, but with a lot of influence from '66. Nice.
I'm gonna dig them out. This is a whole collection of work.
Sweet.
Because this is an accident in the making. I'm going to go ahead. No, I can't give it full screen. I just started going to cons, and they'd say, "Who do you want me to draw?" And the first one I did was Batgirl. And then the second one I did was Batgirl, because I forgot I had a Batgirl at home. I was like, well, okay, we have started a collection now. So I just have all these different artists who've drawn Batgirl for me.
Yeah.
And I always get the cheap ones. Because I send somebody to a convention. It's like, hey, here's $30. Get somebody that's doing sketches in Artist Alley to do a Batgirl. And then like sometimes I will get a print. I'm missing one. Where's the one I really want? This is the one I just showed you. The one I really want doesn't fit in the envelope sleeve. It sits out here by itself, and I really need to get it framed.
Oh yeah,
because she's on that big ledge there. But yeah, that's my Batgirl collection. So yeah, I'd have jumped on TonicMole's artwork too if it was me. Because
yeah, and he did this. Oh, his excellent line work and stuff. It was really cool. And I kind of just cataloged that. I was like, I got to remember that guy. And then we just started working together. And now, I mean, even like, okay, so I had this thing where essentially what it is, I got too many businesses all at once. And it was a little bit too much, evidently. And so I had this huge, like, kind of like a panic attack type thing. It just lasts several days. And so I went and got this medication that's supposed to make it go away, and it gave me a freaking seizure, and now I can't drive for 6 months. So,
yeah,
that seizure messed me up good. Like, I can't remember a week after. So I have vague memories that I watched Ninja Turtles, and I put together a Lego Batmobile. But, so anyways, I got it, but Lily and Wepwawet is basically done, but I added this big fight scene because I was like, maybe it's not quite enough. And so I wanted to redo this add this big fight scene and redo it. And I had it written, the script and everything, but I was struggling to lay it out. I could barely put together a Lego Batmobile. So I holler at Monk, and he goes and gives me these layouts that now I'm just off and running and stuff. But like, I've depended on him so much for all types of things. He does all the covers, and then man, and that he did this Victorian Lillian Wepwawet, which is the greatest thing I've ever freaking seen. The line work, it looks like something from the 1800s, or no, older than that. But like the Renaissance type deal. But yeah, he's it's on there somewhere.
I think I've seen it. It's I know I just passed the smaller picture of it, but I think there's a bigger picture of it, or I could be wrong. You need to put that out there.
Oh, I saw it somewhere. I don't know.
I saw this one.
Oh yeah, there's that one. Maybe. Well, it should be in the images somewhere. Oh, it might be on Kickstarter, but not.
You put it in the place that must not be named. No, is it currently on Kickstarter right now?
No, Kickstarter's done.
Okay. So
Kickstarter, I don't know what's going on. My Kickstarter did crazy good. It is the best Kickstarter I ever had. So many of my customers went to Kickstarter, so I had this amazing Kickstarter. So then I had to extend my Indiegogo to get it across the line. So it'll work out great because it'll be my highest grossing comic book to date. It just take a little longer. But after this, I'll probably jump on. I haven't decided how I'm going to do it. There's the new site that I should have thought about before I got here. Let me get the name real quick so I'm not wrong. I think it's really simple. Like, it's very on the nose.
Another crowdfunding site?
Yeah, Indie Crowdfund.
Oh, okay. Well,
so it's pretty on the nose. It is by other creators and stuff, and they developed this whole website for crowdfunding like specifically comics, but also with retail connected. So retail, you can, how I think, don't quote me on any of this. I believe what it is, you can crowdfund just like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, or you can, and you can do that. And then on the other side, you can do like quantities for retail, which would, totally different because you,
Because you can get you can sell them at a lower rate per issue if you're going to sell a bulk of them.
And you pretty much have to for retailers. So it's more to build readers than to make a big profit, and to build up that retailer thing. And that has been the biggest problem with crowdfunding is, say I have on average about 130 readers per issue. That's fine for crowdfunding, because you're including so many other things that to build up your profit margin to make 130 readers work. But the problem is that's really limiting. Where do you go from there? You only have 130 readers. You are merchandising isn't going to happen. You can't do. I have no interest in like Netflix shows or something, but I still need more readers. I want this thing. I have like 30 or 40 issues planned, and I'd like to go further. You can't really do that crowdfunding. It'd be really hard. The most I've ever heard is like 6 or 7 issues that anybody has reached.
Yeah.
It gets.
I know that Billy Tucci tried to, and I think he was pretty successful at it. He had like a retailer bundle on either his, I think it was on his She one. It might have been on the Miss Fury one, but I'm pretty sure it was on the She one. And he had a pretty good rate for those. And Monk is back, we think. He said he had to reconnect. Looks like he has reconnected.
He lives in the mountains.
Really?
I don't know. He says that.
That's where you normally put a monastery, is up on top of the mountain.
Yeah, it goes along with the monk thing.
Absolutely.
And so, that's kind of one of the deals, with crowdfunding comics. You have the guys like 2C and all this stuff that make these huge amounts, and people go, see, it's great. It's like, yeah, if you're famous from the 90s or now, just a famous comic artist, obviously, my God, your name alone should, sell the comic. And so, but there's so many things that are short-term right now. They're short-term wins. And everybody's like, no, don't clap for short-term wins. The industry has to find its next breath. Right now it's wheezing. It needs that next breath, that thing. And I argued with a mainstream as a pro, I forget what their name is, but they're implying that indie/underground never had anything to do with comics success. And I was
really?
Now I've looked the numbers, I've researched comic book history, I know it forwards and backwards. And what I know is comic books, mainstream comics like DC and Marvel, died in the 60s and really never fully recovered. They DC kind of died when Marvel came, which was the 60s. Marvel had been around, but the 60s, Spider-Man and all these things, the X-Men.
Oh yeah, timely morphed into Marvel, and then it was like a whole new era.
Right. And then into the 70s, actually, both Marvel and DC started to struggle into the 80s. And along came the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it revived the entire industry, leaning black and white comics. But there was this massive surge. Ninja Turtles was outselling Marvel, like an Avengers or something like that. Now, they only had one comic, but it was still outselling everybody else, and that's two dudes. Now they had a bunch of friends and stuff, guys working on it, but that's just this little podunk deal tapped into what customers wanted more than two giant conglomerates.
Well, and the thing about the Turtles phenomenon, because I was there,
it
happened, was that the book came out. It looked like it came out of Eastman and Laird's garage off of a mimeograph machine. Probably did, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it was manually distributed through the network of distributors that we had at the time, not just Diamond, but a bunch of different distributors. And then by the time the third issue came out, everybody wanted those first two issues, and no retailer had them and couldn't get them. Well, the demand went so high for them that the retailer said, okay, so readers want this kind of a thing. I am never going to let this kind of a thing slip past me again.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there was everybody and their brother was cranking out black and white comics, and it led to the glut of the late 80s and early 90s. We actually had two gluts. We had an independent glut, which was everything from the Pork Knight to Nat Rat to adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters and preteen turdy gene kung fu kangaroos. Yeah. And Wabbit Wampage, all of that black and white stuff that was just derivative of the Turtles because everyone was trying to crank something out. And then you had the secondary glut, which was all the image material that was, more of the pros saying, okay, well, we're going to go off and do our own creator stuff because look what these indie guys are doing.
Yeah.
And so we had a double glut hit the retailer market, and that's when everything really collapsed, and it's never really come back from that.
No, and I'd say so. Yeah, the late 80s, some of the in the early 90s. But by the time Image really launched, that early 90s deal, the Ninja Turtles had, kind of disappeared when it comes to comic books. It was a cartoon, and to this day, that is, you got fans in their 40s who may or may not know that cartoon that they're in a fandom of was based on a black and white comic. And I'm like, what?
It was a pretty serious black and white comic too.
Yeah. And see, and I was, I'm almost 40. And so I was too young for the first black and white comics. And so whenever the cartoon came out and stuff, I come across a collected of the first 3 or 4 issues, but it was colorized and stuff. And that's what I read for the longest time. That was my knowledge of Mirage Studios.
Yeah, and they were oversized. The original ones were not. They were as big as a Marvel magazine.
Right. And more than
I had the standalone Raphael #1, which I believe was the first appearance of Casey Jones.
Yes.
And I don't have it anymore, and I don't know where it is, and I don't know what happened to it, and I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and those. That's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's nowadays, any comic past 1970, it's rare if they're worth anything. Even in the 90s, there was comics worth $200 that just come out, but they're worth not $1. But the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the small print runs, a 4th printing of #1 is still worth like close to $100. For a 4th printing, that is amazing.
Yeah, but because they did keep it small. They okay, well, we got an order for another 50. Let's print 50. Yeah,
and see now, once that early 90s started, the image boom started, and they were obviously, my personal opinion, they were mainly, not all, because there's the Max, and there was some really good stuff mixed in there, but those main like Wildcats and Spawn and all that. To me, it was artists that weren't writers who remembered what they did in Marvel and said, what if I change it a little? Spawn is like if you took Spider-Man and the Crow and mixed them together. His mask looks very much basically Spider-Man derivative. And Liefeld was very, very much obviously X-Men, and Jim Lee was no different. Wildcats was X-Men. It was just X-Men, and he mixed it up a little. But, there were a lot of derivatives. But the black and white scene had gotten over its turtle obsession because now you had Biker Mice from Mars. It was all cartoons. People wanted to cut out the comic and just say, hey, what if we reproduce the turtle cartoon phenomenon, not the comic book one? And black and white comics went, super artsy, but no less successful. Now, here's my crazy conspiracy theory. During that time, you had IP, Ninja Turtles being the big one that shoved Batman right out of the way. That's something that's rare for a black and white comic to, puff up its chest up against conglomerate IP. And it happened. Now, Warner Brothers and Disney, which now, but back then it was still just Marvel and Warner Brothers, which is still giant. They take that very seriously because they've never cared about comic books. It's always been about IP control, making movies and toys and action figures. And suddenly they saw their action figures and movies pushed to the side for adaptions of a black and white comic that they don't own. Not only do they not own it, they can't own it because these guys are very anti-corporate. And
they were the Ben and Jerry's of comic books.
Exactly. And so, that was a big threat. But then the image boom, where DC and Marvel is just stomped into the dirt by their own artists that just create these deals. And you seen Gen 13 was getting a cartoon. Wildcats had a cartoon. That's dangerous. It's very dangerous for DC and Marvel because they depend solely on that merchandising, movies, and all these spinoffs. Then you have The Crow, and then you have The Mask, and then you have one after another. Giant IP launching out of indie, not only indie, but underground. Hell, Ghost World got a movie, which was terrific.
Yes,
but it got one. There was just tons of this IP coming out of indie, and all of a sudden, magically, as you said before, with the Ninja Turtles, with the diverse distribution network, magically everybody, well, let's just do a monopoly, which guarantees no new IP that isn't owned by Marvel or DC will ever reach anybody.
Because Diamond, who is the monopoly, was the monopoly distributor. Right. I think that has now changed, and I hope that continues to evolve and change. Mm-hmm. Many times, I've spoken with independent creators back in the day before I was doing this semi-professionally, or at least pretending to. We're like, I've got comic books that they were producing in their house. I was like, why isn't this at the store? It says, well, we can't get enough numbers in Diamond for Diamond to carry us. I'm like, well, go another way. There is no other way.
Right.
It's Diamond. Diamond says, sorry, we carried your first issue. We know it ended on a cliffhanger, but we didn't get we didn't get the numbers we were looking for. So we're not going to promote your second issue in our catalog, which means that no store can order it, which means you're screwed.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look, whenever DC and Marvel stumble, the thing that has repeatedly saved the comic book industry is indie and underground comics. They made certain that could never happen again. It is my personal opinion that that's how they want it, because they don't care if they make 50 cents an issue off of a comic. They want to make 1 billion, So, that's kind of my hot take on the whole deal. And
I think you're on something.
Wrapping back around, that's why I'm interested in the I forgot its name again.
Lillian Wepwawet. Oh,
no. That's the indie crowdfunding website,
Yeah.
It connects with retailers, so you can sell like 50 issues and give them it will take crowdfunding comics to take it more seriously. You have to have hope in the future in a way, because we can't sell comics for $15 or $20 forever.
No, that's one of the things I talked with Tim Lim about that way back before Comicsgate was even truly a thing, before it got its name.
Yeah.
And I was like, you how are we going to get monthly comics if this is the way you go? Because you're charging $25 a copy, which I get because of what you've got to do, but I don't want to pay $25 for the second issue or the third issue. I'm certainly not going to pay $25 for the 15th issue, especially if I've got to wait 20 years to get to that far.
Right.
And so it was always a matter of how this is going to be a sustainable model. And it's going to have to get to a point where there's a distribution place in place for retailers to utilize and get that price point that they need. Or there's going to be some sort of a publishing house that, sits on top of all of this. But like an Alterna.
Yeah. And, it's not super hard. Quantity is the problem. A distribution method would solve that, because, currently the reason it's hard to sell competitively against other mainstream comics is because our low print runs. We're doing like 300 to 500.
Yeah, and you're shipping out one comic book to
Yeah.
to an address. You're not
Oh, yeah.
sending a box of 20 to an address.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, I also did the number crunching. At least the folks I know, the pricing isn't ridiculous. It's very competitive, except for you don't generally order Batman, one Batman issue directly from DC. If you did, it would cost very much the same, because I was like, my local comic store didn't carry Dynamite, and I was reading Red Sonja, and I was like, I should just order that issue directly from Dynamite, and it was about $10, which is crowd.
But you know what? I've heard from retailers, and every other Saturday night, and it's happening this Saturday night, we have the LCS show where we have retailers from across the country meet, and it's basically a bitch session.
Yeah.
And they talk about, hey, Dynamite sent out my shipments today, and I got like 4 boxes, and one box had one comic in it, because that's how they package stuff up.
Yeah, and see, this was, they're sending you one issue. The shipping was like $7.
Exactly.
And so the comics $3. But I mean, realistically, that's pretty on par. Like when I do the math now, that makes it. My comics are usually about $15. Now I usually overdo it. Now, for one thing, my comics ain't 19 to 20 pages. They're 40 to 50. Also, I always somehow like I got my first issue, I was like, just this comic, and then I was like, whoopsie daisy, I made a second comic. So it actually ended up being 2 comics that I shipped out with it, because I did that it was a 20-page little extra. And so I tried to make it to where whatever the price is, you get that, where I am being competitive with DC and Marvel. The only catch is I can't make a cheap comic. I can't make a comic as crappy as they can, because I bought, what was it? I don't know. It was a DC or Marvel, and I was like, this is like tissue paper.
Yeah,
and
Marvels are like that, especially the covers.
Yeah, maybe 20 pages, pushing it, and then they're mainly ads.
Speaking of covers,
yeah.
And Monk, this one goes to you, because normally what we're seeing is covers from you or pinups from you. Do you have any plans, or have you done it and I've missed it, of doing a book solidly the interiors?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I've only done like a few pages. The most I've done is from Tales from the Stacks.
I remember
I
that.
did 17 pages for that. And I have a 4-page short coming up in the Lost Pages, which is currently on Indiegogo. But I work full-time, so this is just something I'm doing in my spare time.
Gotcha. Well,
it makes me slow.
The talent is there enough that this will hopefully grow into replacing your full-time job. I've always heard that when your part-time job makes more money than your full-time job, you need to switch jobs. But I realize you're not there yet with the money, because it's crowdfunding and slow print runs, and
I pay like crap.
Yeah, I was going to say artists get paid up front, and the writers have to work it out with the crowdfunding on hope.
He also did a 1-page in Saving the World #2. It was great, though. It was very good.
I might have to hit him up for commissions through his Twitter page there, because now I've got to have an Illustrator Monk Batgirl in my collection.
Yeah. I had a reviewer review my comic, and it gets to that last page, and I didn't know how people would react having 1 page, but it was kind of a separate story, it segues to that, and it was just a 1-page deal.
That's interesting that you bring that up, that you had a reviewer review it, because I get these to review, because and I have to buy them, which is not what I do with like Dynamite or something. I get PDFs to review with. But with crowdfunding, it's like, okay, I'm going to get the book. I pay for the book. I'm going to review the book, just like I'm going to do with Vestry #1 here that I got the other day. But I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, what good does my review do for this book because the fact that I have it means it's distributed. It's done. The campaign has run its course. It's not like it's something where, oh, RJ said this is really good. I'm going to run out to my LCS and get one, or go online and order a copy.
For
that's
me,
the other thing we got to handle.
Now, if reviewers that I know review contact me, I'll give them, the PDF or whatever to review. For me, it's almost just so I can see how it's being received, to kind of learn how other people are reading it. I don't really like if someone just generally don't like me, like what I do, where they're like, I just don't like what his actual intent was. I'd go, well, I don't care. But if they're receiving my intent wrong, that's very helpful, right? Because I want to express a certain feeling and a certain tone. And so I like watching reviews and stuff to see if that I'm succeeding in that. If they're like, this reminds me of 80s Punisher, I'd be like, well, that ain't right at all. And so, I like those reviews to see what works and what doesn't. I get super contradictory stuff. And so, huge grain of salt. But, I had my first issue. The first issue is the hardest issue to ever do because you're trying to establish everything in whatever 32 pages or so. And that is really, really hard to do. And so I used a lot of internal monologue to accomplish that. That in movies and comic books, you got to be careful because you don't want to tell people what's happening. You want to show them what's happening.
Right.
But
you got to show, not tell. That's the old expression.
Right. I had to move that story fast, though, so I did it more than I liked. And I was fully aware of it. I was like, that was a lot more internal monologue than I'd prefer. And sometimes I was very much telling and not showing. But, it was what it was. And so I was like, yeah, I still think it's fine. I like it. But I wish I could have, got that refined. But every time I tried it, I wrote an entirely different script. And it was just like 6 issues. And I was like, why are you doing 6 issues of an origin? And so I said, that's fine. And one reviewer said, I love the internal monologue. It totally got me in that headspace of that character. And the other was like, this guy sucks. All he does is internal monologue. And ironically, my second issue has none because at that point I had established my world. So then I could really tell a story properly where I have 3 acts and everything's shown and happens gradually. And, but yeah, that in, I maybe one of the few that love critiques, someone can say 100 bad things. And if they say one good thing, I'm like, they love me. And so,
it only takes one to make your day.
Now, I've never had a bad review, so you might contact me later if there's actually someone that's like, this is the worst comic I ever
and
read.
Those will crush you.
Yeah, I might go, okay, now I hate this person.
Yeah, what's really rough is because, I'm a writer. I write for Destroyer Books. I write the Remo Williams adventures. And when I go out to Amazon, I say, oh, there's a new review out there, and the star count went down on average. Oh, boy, what happened here? And I'm reading something about like, oh, this isn't the Remo Williams I remember from the 70s. And gosh, I'm like, oh, no, you totally misunderstood that part. But you know what? As a professional, you've got to, you say, thank you for the review. I will take it into consideration. And you either walk away saying, he's got something there. I probably need to work on that. Or you're like, he ain't never going to get it. I don't care.
Right. And, you'll have a vision, and it is what it is. And, there's artistic, and then there's capitalism, and you've got to balance that a little bit. Because essentially you got to go, well, if there's a huge problem that people are having, you got to go, how can I limit that?
Right.
And keep my vision, secure. So far, I haven't had I haven't had too much trouble. I've had a few things that because like issue number 2, I was like, I've been concerned with I mix comedy in a weird way, drama and comedy and stuff. And my comic, it will never totally go. What's the comic from Dave Sim? Cerebus. It never goes Cerebus totally, where it starts out a parody comedy and then goes super dark. It's not entirely that, but I am building to more serious things, and the increase in comedy in these first issues is a setup to that. So that
just don't go Savage Dragon with it, please.
Right? No. And it's so that I want my serious drama moments to matter, and I feel comedy is good for like a roller coaster. You tick tick tick, and then wow.
Yeah, comedy is great for that kind of thing. I mean, think about the sitcoms that we watched in the 80s and the 90s, with must-see TV. And it's like, hey, it's your happy half hour. It's your happy half hour tonight on a very special episode of Blossom. And they're like, whoa, what?
I'm thinking, I grew up with MASH, right? And so MASH was so funny, and it was ha, ha, ha. And then that, like, the music was slow, and stuff, whereas the same, but slowed down. And they had some episodes that crush you.
Do you know the lyrics to the MASH theme song?
No.
I
don't think so.
The game of life is hard to play. I'm going to lose it anyway. The losing card I'll someday lay, and this is all I'll have to say. That suicide is painless. It brings so many changes, and I can take or leave it if I please. And I sang that in grade school chorus.
Right.
but that's a depressing theme song for a show like that. But yeah, when they slowed it down, you knew something serious was going to happen.
Yeah.
That last episode, I think, was the first time I ever cried watching a television show. Was that with Alan Alda, Hawkeye, talking about the chicken won't shut up. She can't keep that chicken quiet. The soldiers are going to hear us on this bus. And it's like, oh, the lady, she killed the chicken to shut it up. And he keeps telling the psychiatrist this. And he's like, so why are you having so much trouble with the chicken? And as his mind breaks through his repressed memory, and you realize that it was her baby crying in her lap, and she killed it. I was like, oh my God, that's like that would just totally mess up your head to be in there and see that. And
I was probably 4 or 5, because of course all the shows I watched was probably reruns, a bit after, because I was born in 81. So would MASH end in 83?
I don't remember the year, but
it
might have been.
I was watching, a few years a little after, but but they would play them in chronological order. But I remember when that last episode of MASH, and maybe I watched it when it was originally, I can't remember. But anyways, boom. But there were so many that, when they would take the opportunity when a cast member left, they'd die, and you're like, no. But that's a great example of, I don't like when a comedic writer gets too big of a head and goes dark. That's just what they do now.
Right.
I've gone, like, my comics traditionally were dark. This is actually the first thing that I've done that's like comedy. And if I was going to go all dark, then I would have just done that,
Well, let's look at the book a little bit here and tell me how is this guy comedy?
Oh yeah, that one. This one isn't as much, but it's still kind of funny. It's a little bit. There's jokes in there, but certainly Wepwawet is the darkest thing. Is one of the darker elements of saving the world.
And I need to know about that name too. What that name means, if anything. You've had it for a long time.
Yes, I have. Wepwawet is a Egyptian god, and he's the opener of paths. And so in my high school years, I got really interested in like The Doors and Jim Morrison poetry and Shaman and all these types.
No one here gets out alive.
Exactly. And so Wepwawet kind of came of that era, to where he's always been this kind of omnipotent thing that guides people and all this type of deal. And I had I mean, I bet it was 10 years ago that I had this idea of what if Lily is alive and he kind of guides her. But then within the context of saving the world, there is a gigantic overarching storyline, and Lily and Wepwawet are kind of the center bead. So you can read Saving the World and never read anything else. And you'll get mainly the comedy, and you'll get the drama of Kira and Nora's adventures. You know, they have ups and downs and real life type things. But if you're interested in the massive arc that is kind of like a Crisis of Infinite Earths type situation, then Lily and Wepwawet is the first glimpse of that. And so I've tried to hint a little bit in Saving the World, but it is so big. It's, you know, really about Kira and Nora's adventure. All of this bigger story arc is just happening around them. And so anyways, Lily and Wepwawet, first it collects the first two shorts were in Saving the World #2 and Saving the Universe #1. Lily and Wepwawet is kind of a trade paperback. It's a deluxe, perfect bound book that has those two plus an entirely new story, and then a 3-page story that's Saving the World. So you kind of get the full adventure of Lily and Wepwawet that introduces their story. And there's lots of, I can say so little about Wepwawet because his mystery is part of the major deal.
Sure, yeah, you don't want to give it away.
Now, Lily, she was just a bank teller. And she one night wakes up and this Wepwawet character is just standing over her bed. And she don't know where he comes from, who he is, or whatever. He introduces himself and starts talking and stuff like that. And that's in Saving the Universe. And there's basically more of that in Saving the World #2. And that's where you kind of kick off. And he is this omnipotent thing where he's a void. So time and space, he has, you know, it's not, he's free of the binds of time and space and stuff. Hence the dinosaur thing. Now you said Bud Root. Well, I love comic history, and the Jungle Girl is integral to everything comic books, you know?
Oh, yeah, from Sheena to Rima to... Right.
The very beginning, along with right next to Superman was Sheena, and so on and so forth. And then, you know, I was interested in all of those early comics throughout the 40s and 50s. And then, you know, in the modern area, the 80s, 90s stuff, you have Bud Root. And now you have a lot more. Dynamite's brought back a bunch, but then you had Frank Chow kind of do his rendition. I love the idea. I love how so many artists approach the exact same thing. A woman in this jungle-inspired bikini type thing. And sometimes there's dinosaurs, sometimes not. And the Ninja Turtles, Jim Lawson hit his own. It was, I love the character, and I forgot her name because I can never remember names when I'm talking. Anyways, she's the time traveler. Issue 8 she was in. Anyways, they had her go back, and she was a Jungle Girl. So I'm so intrigued by that phenomenon, you know, of people so intrigued by this thing. And I always wanted to do my own, but I didn't have a unique way to do that, like why I would do it. And that's where Lily come in. And I was like, you know, her traveling through time and stuff. And this is set up to be a trilogy. So she's, you know, a jungle girl. There's dinosaurs in this whole bit. And that kind of introduces it. And then by the end of this comic, you get the first info on what's really going on. Now, to be fair, if anybody got Saving the Universe, which is that third one there, that one gives some heavy hints. The entire comic is actually about this big overarching storyline.
Okay.
And so
I'm gonna ask you a real big question here now, because I'm looking at this. I see Mole. I know that's you.
Yeah.
I see Sizzle, and I know Sizzle's in the chat there. Who's this Palmiotti character? Because you don't see that name too often in comics, and when you do, it means something.
Peter Palmiotti. That's Jimmy Palmiotti's brother.
So they are related.
Yeah, they're brothers. And he Peter, he did Aquaman in the 90s. He's an inker for Aquaman, and he did some other stuff like that. And then he crowdfunded a comic called Retro, which is his own superhero. And really, that's where I did comics when in my teens and 20s, but then it kind of just, back then, if you wanted a print run, it had to be $3,000 on an offset print press, and that was $10,000 or something.
Yeah.
It just wasn't possible, so I had to do photocopies and all this, and didn't ever get anywhere. And so, anyways, I gave it up for 10 years. I was late 20s, and I said, "It's just not going to happen, buddy. The industry's dead, and nobody wants to read your psycho comics." And so I just kind of gave it up and went off living a different life. And weird stuff, just a million. Oh yeah, okay, I'll get back to Dinosaur Brothers. A million different weird things, but Jimmy Palmiotti, he followed me on Twitter. I don't know why. And I think because I just comment on everybody's stuff. And then Brian Polito. And then I think at that point, so many pros followed me that everybody thought I was. Because I just...
Make it until you make it.
Exactly. I just acted like it. I got followers all over the place. And I would just stroll in like, "Hey, what's up, fellow pros?" And I never, had anything really printed all that much. And so anyways, but that made me think, hey, maybe I can do something. And I went on, I decided to bring back Saving the World. I'd had one issue of Saving the World already drawn. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get that comic and finally get it printed. Also, I'd never heard of digital printing and crowdfunding. Right? I had no idea this stuff was going on and just kind of stumbled across it. And I went on, Jimmy Palmiotti said, "My brother Peter is on Twitter, follow him." So I did and started talking to him. And he said, "Hey, if you're going to do a comic, you should come on my podcast." So I went on there, and that's where I met Doug Garrett with Gravestone Press. And that just kind of, that kicked off this whole thing. And then, I'd been talking to Peter, so he did a short, is called Stratus in that Saving the Universe. And that's kind of how everything works. I know how to keep snowballs rolling. And so that's how I met everybody and all that type of stuff, just by reaching out to people, which, anybody wanting to do this, that is it. That's the key. That's the magic. That's the magic to it all, is reach out. If you have, now you'll see pros and they'll tell you, well, don't be too familiar. Don't be just emailing submissions. No, that's a lie. Do it. Just do it. It takes a certain personality to pull it off, but it is the way to do it. It's how this works.
The secret to doing it is doing it.
Right, exactly. And this isn't, I had in my early 20s, George Romero, the guy that does the Dead movies.
Yeah.
I wrote this script for like a sequel to his movies. And it just took, and the idea was it'd be a comic book, so you could do things that he couldn't pull off in a movie. I couldn't get a hold of him, but I got a hold of his son, George Romero Jr. And I started talking to him. And his dad had just released Land of the Dead, that the big budget, the big budget one. And he was going around the tour and stuff, and his son was doing a zombie cartoon. So anyways, he's going to have me on as this character creator, but it all fell through. I sent a submission to Sega for a video game. They sent me back, and like I had communication to Sega. Now I'm a nobody living in a shed in Oklahoma. But if I had an email, if I had a phone number, I would do it. I called H.R. Giger's manager. It was like his art manager. Talked to him for like an hour. Wow. And he said, he goes, hey, I can't, because I had a script for Alien. I'd write script. I'd like a movie and just write a script. So anyways, I had a script for a sequel to Aliens that kind of separated. It was very Prometheus-like. I don't know how, we'll leave that to coincidence, but it was very Prometheus-like. And I had character designs in the whole bit because I loved H.R. Giger's artwork. And he said, hey, I don't know, but I'll read it and, whatever. And I said, okay. So I send it off to him and stuff like that. Nothing ever happened. But usually, 99 out of 100 times, nothing will happen. But sometimes, just once, you get that lucky break, And that's how, I've really approached everything. And so, that was like, it was like with Jim Lawson. I was like, well, maybe I can afford to get, I can convince him to do a little pinup for my comic. And that would be just amazing to me because I'm so, I grew up with his work from, admittedly, mainly Ninja Turtle Adventures because Mirage did everything. They had that Archie comic. It was the same guys.
Oh, yeah.
It's just Jim Lawson drawing everything. And so, but that's what, I grew up with him with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures. And so it meant so much to me. And then, to get him to do even more, really awesome. And so anyways, that's a long story about all that. But yeah, and then through like meeting Doug Garrett, and I started following a bunch of people, and that's where I come across Illustrator Monk. And just his artwork, and guess what I did? I direct messaged him and said, "Hey, buddy, what you doing?" and really, what I love, I like a really beautiful cover, which is weird it's weird for underground comics, and the style of comics I do, usually the cover is drawn by the interior guy. But that's one thing I like about mainstream comics. I love those beautiful covers, I love a super high-end artist just capturing this moment in the comic. Now, I don't like when it totally contradicts the interiors. And I'm, out of 1 to 10, I might be a 5 and Monk is a 10. But for me, his style is like if I was really, really, really good. It's not shocking.
Sure.
Like you look at his cover, you don't open it and go, well, this is totally, totally different. We have these same sensibilities.
Yeah. The last thing you want is to pick up an Alex Ross cover, buy it, and take it home. And you got Matt Feasel artwork inside.
Oh, exactly. And you can love both artists, but if they just aren't
They don't
matching.
complement.
Right. And for me, Monk's about the only one I ever met where it's like, that is a beautiful compliment, to my interiors. It's this super high-end version of the smut I draw, but it's, that keeps that tone. So they're not totally, but then, but while bringing things like his Wepwawet is the coolest freaking Wepwawet ever. It just gives this Victorian feel is what it is. No, it's Renaissance feel, just the hyper anatomy and stuff. And I just freaking love it. But, and so that is why he draws all my covers because I'm like, that's what I like. So I just stick with that.
I'm looking at the bundles here on the Indiegogo page, and I like the catch-up bundle that's here. This $20. This catches you up from the very beginning, which is pre-Indiegogo campaigns. You can get it all in PDF. I'm assuming you can probably get it all in paper at some point.
There's the physical catch-up bundle right under there.
Oh, okay. So 65, that's a little rich for my blood, but you do get the PDF of each one.
Right.
And there are plenty of people who that's perfectly
And-
affordable for.
And there would,
That.
yeah. And if someone, it's one of the catches. I saw a lot of people, people seemed like they really like the books. And for me, Lily and Wepwawet is kind of a collected edition in a way that it captures their whole adventure. And so I was kind of an experiment because it's a spin-off. It's no big deal. And so, it costs more. And so the 65 gets you 3 normal comics and then a deluxe.
Yeah.
Now, cent per page is my comics just keep growing because I want to tell my story and I don't care about page count. Hence why I think my number 3 will be like 55 or 60 pages. Just because that's as much. I have a lot of story to tell and I want it paced at a certain deal. If sometimes my issues are 60, that'll be fine. But I will likely at some point have just a floppy of Lily and Wepwawet because it's just 44 pages. That could be a floppy, no problem.
Sure.
And so, where in the future a catch-up will be that price, but currently at $25 for Lily and Wepwawet. I think it's totally worth it. Well, especially if you buy anything you buy physical, you get. We didn't reach the 3,500. That'd be one thing. I'm giving all of the stretch goals because when I had my little health problems, all my backers and readers and stuff were so freaking awesome. They were just like, hey, it's like, because I was like, normally I'm shipping immediately, but I just will not be able to do that this time. It will be now. I listed September 2020. It will be out then, but usually I say September and then I ship it in August. But it's just not gonna. It's gonna be what I actually said.
So you're actually late by being on time.
By being on time.
Okay, I got you there. But the stretch goals here. I was just checking those out too. Now we're at 614, 18 days left. Is this the first 30 days, and you haven't hit the extension yet, or?
No, this is the extension. So we got 18 days to get to $1,000. Now, as the stretch goals, I would love to reach $3,500. Now, my Kickstarter did freaking crazy. So if this reaches 1,000, I'm just fulfilling all of the stretch goals. Because I think I ended at 22 or 2,300 on Kickstarter.
Okay.
And so if it reaches 1,000, that's fine. Because well, for one thing, I was like, well, I need to send those to Jim to sign. I don't want to wait until this totally wraps. That would delay my comic.
Sure.
What if I just give them anyways? And so if, anybody that orders physical, you're getting a signed Jim Lawson print. And it's that, I call it Kira Triumphant, but it's just Kira standing there with her arms on her hips.
Is that picture here anywhere?
It's down. It's with the on the stretch goal thing.
I keep going back to this picture because I just love this.
Isn't that beautiful? You're getting a poster of that too.
Illustrator Monk's style. I can't place it. I know where I've seen it, but it was one of the cross-gen artists that used to do one of those titles there. And I just can't remember which title it is, but I loved everything that was cross-gen when it came out. This one here, that would be
right there, and that'll be the sticker. You're getting a hollow sticker of that, and then a signed art print. I think it's 5x5 by 8.5 or something like that, and it's like 130 pound. And then my Hunk If You Love Ginger's bumper sticker. Some people got that with the Saving the World #2. I got more. Put them in there.
Did you go through Sticker Mule?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Both the stickers. I sometimes do others, but no. Yeah, both the bumper sticker and the deal. They do great work.
Yeah. I'm going to shill for a second here. we do have, we go through Sticker Mule. We get these 3-inch holofoil stickers ourselves with the Critical Blast logo that's obliterating my face right now. It's really just this big. But it's perspective, people, perspective. And if you want one of these, all you have to do is send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Critical Blast at 1097 Presswick Drive, Belleville, Illinois, 62221. And what I'll do is, I'll just take your envelope out of the envelope you ship it in. I'll put 2 of them in there so you can give one to a friend. And then, you'll get 2 of these real shiny holographic things. But I love Sticker Mule because, as you probably know, having ordered one thing from them, they will pepper you with possibilities for thousands of things.
Yeah.
And they put them out to you. It's like such, I don't really need those, but damn, I want one now.
Well, I just collect everything because whenever they have their deals and stuff, I just go ahead because I will need them. Because I need I'll need 2 or 3 stickers or something for every campaign.
I got the keychains.
Nice.
They put out the acrylic keychains, and then I got the lapel buttons.
Sweet.
So I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever you want to send me, I'm going to order it.
I need to try the buttons someday.
Well, the thing we ordered them also, and I don't have any, when we did the promo for Bulletproof. We had the Bulletproof badge because they will die cut. You send it with transparent background, it comes out like that, and I think those look cool. It just so happens that our logo is a perfect circle, so it just comes out on the circle.
Yeah,
and you're doing the cover, so you're getting the perfect rectangle.
Square.
Those shaped stickers I think are cool, and they do the charms the same way. The lapel pins, they die cut those things. Because I recognize the style. I got my, and I won't show it on the stream because YouTube will kill the stream, but I got my Jim Ballant Tarot Origins trade paperback, which has a completely nude cover, skyclad cover. But with that, I also got the Raven Hex charm that they did. Because they hit a stretch goal. I didn't order it. It just, thrown in extra. And you can, see it's die cut to the shape of it around there. Free advertisement for Sticker Mule. I mention them all the time.
Jim Ballant's on my list. I would love to have like a variant cover done by him because in the 90s, before I moved on to all the highfalutin trendy stuff, his Catwoman run on Catwoman comic, really, it was him, was so freaking awesome. And I still have that signed by him and the writer and all that stuff, framed in my room. But yeah, that I just loved his 90s stuff so much. And
I have a album, the Shattered Earth, #1. It was a spinoff of X Mutants, another one of those black and white 90s titles. And he did the cover to that way before Catwoman. And I had him on stream. I was like, hey, you remember this? He's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But you can see the evolution of the style because it was like, I did not recognize it as Jim Ballant's artwork until I looked at the signature, and like the signature is unchanged. I'm like, really? Somebody copying Jim Ballant?
It's sad. It's just the way comics are. Rarely have creators been rock stars. The comics, the characters, not the creators. But I love what was for the first appearance of a superhero is worth tons of money. The first time a famous artist is in print is worth nothing, and I'm like, what? What?
Well, that's like when I went to 1989 Chicago Comic-Con. Todd McFarlane was there, and he was promoting Spawn, and we all got lined up, with whatever comic we brought to get signed, and Gary Frank was there signing. I got him to sign my Hulk, and I was going down the image table, and I got to Todd McFarlane's chair. What do I put in front of him? Infinity Inc. Because that was his first job was inking Infinity Inc. Hey Nick, thanks for showing in the chat here. Got to get the kids to bed, and now it's work time. Yes, I'm already working. So
I
showed up.
I got a box of all my comics. I can't find it, but it was one of the. Oh, this is something else I've been wanting to do, but it hasn't come together. I've had a lot of people interested from different publishers, but I haven't pulled it off because I just don't think I'll probably have to hand it off to someone else. I can't organize it because I just too much on my plate already. I went insane with too much on my plate, so maybe I should chill off. But it was a swimsuit issue, and I love those things when I was a freaking kid.
Oh yeah, we all did.
The Marvel and Image, they were fun as hell, and it was just so different at the time. I know it wouldn't be the same now because you know swimsuit issues is just whatever. It's a little bit cliche at this point, but man, back then it was like, whoa, this is crazy cool. And
that's because Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues were a big thing.
Yeah, and so I wanted to put together one of those with Indy. But anyways, neither here nor there. The whole point was I went and bought from a dollar bin one of the Image ones. Homage or something. Anyways,
yeah,
it was the first printed artwork ever of J. Scott Campbell. You wouldn't recognize it. It don't look like J. Scott Campbell at all. It just looks like imagey. You know the whole squinty eyes and square heads. It was that whole bit. But and you would never guess this guy was going to dominate within a very short time. I mean, Gen 13 was just around the corner. And that's like, a lot of comics like Wildcats and stuff like that. I'll look at it and go, it was kind of the era. But Gen 13, I'm still like, my God, that is just so freaking good. And Danger Girl and stuff. J. Scott Campbell's art is just crazy because there's so much kinetic energy in every frame. But anyways, I saw that and I was like, wow, that's freaking amazing because it said J. Scott Campbell and I was like, that don't look like J. Scott Campbell. And I Googled it and it said, oh yeah, that's the first time he just got hired by Homage Studios and they just had him do a pinup for that. And that was his first thing ever. And but I found that so interesting. But it's funny that it's now 90s comics aren't worth anything because they printed 2 million of each. But
to get first an artist's first appearance and have them sign it, like it's like I don't know how much Ninja Santa is worth. I think that's the right title. But that was Jim Lee's first independent work that he did, and now he's editor-in-chief publisher at DZ Comics.
Yeah. But somehow, I mean, I bet nothing. Nothing at all. And it's baffling to me. But it goes to show that comics is a weird thing, And I think it's kind of, rarely there's egotistical creators, mind you.
We do have a call from Eric here to get, a swimsuit issue. I'm betting at least, a swimsuit panel. Get Monk to do a swimsuit panel of Saving the World Girls, and we'll...
Well, we got... rounding up the people to do it was the easy part. It's the figuring out how to Kickstart or Indiegogo that thing. There's so many moving parts that you don't think about, but it's going to happen at some point. And maybe I can talk Doug Garrett into it.
That sounds awesome.
Gravestone Press is doing good.
Yeah, we just had Gravestone Press on, obviously, Vestry. I just showed the cover for that. We got it in a couple days ago. So the physical edition, I like the fact that there's just a couple of tiers here. You don't have to spend all day saying, which one do I want? It's digital bundle, physical bundle.
Mm-hmm.
There you have it. Come in and get it. I'm talking for myself now because I had to be very picky and choosy. A lot of people I have on the show, they've got great stuff. I'm like, I wish I could. Not this week. This is one of the ones I'm definitely going to jump on, and I'm glad I've got 18 days to do it with. So I'm going to be getting in on this one. 11 claimed. There should be more claimed on this. So if you're watching the replay on this, and the banner's been reminding you all throughout the show now, the link to the Indiegogo page is down there, first line in the description. We encourage you to click on that. Check this out. This is the interior artwork. Now, this is very much Strangers in Paradise kind of style too. So I love that. It's sexy, but it's not sexual. even though she's wearing, loincloth and a hanging bikini thing. Looks like it's a kind of a dream sequence. It looks like it might be, or maybe these pages aren't in sequence here or in order.
I think I mixed them up to fool you.
Okay. Which is fine, because we don't want to read the story online. We want to just see examples of the interior artwork. I love the timing on this here, because this 3-panel here, Will Eisner would be proud of this, because he was the master of using panels to show timing and pacing in a story where the shadows on her and then the eyes open.
Will Eisner invented the Jungle Girl. No, he created Sheena.
He created Sheena, yeah.
Yeah. And so he invented the whole idea. So that's which is funny, because, today the Jungle Girl is kind of the problematic, character. But
somebody says you got a problematic character, you've got a hot property.
You got a good one.
Push it.
And it's not new idea. Image was based on the "Ain't we a little saucy?"
Sure they were.
Don't let your parents see this, lady. And then Chaos Comics to this day, Coffin Comics now. His gig is, we're a little bad, that type of deal.
Yeah, and I got a collection of Cherry Pop-Tart comics that.
Yeah, Cherry Pop-Tart. Yeah,
that was just, there was no hint or a wink. There was like, hey, here we are.
right. Well, and that's. Man, European comics, some of my favorite artists like Noe and Milo Manera and stuff like that.
And Butterscotch graphic novel.
Yeah, exactly. And Noe did the Piano Tuner, which it's graphic pornography. But man, his art is mind blowing. It's a cartoon. It's cartoonish, but real, like photorealistic at the same time. It's so good, fine art, And but in Europe, in most other places in the world, like Europe and Japan, they don't get that pornography. Like they don't separate pornography and literature. You can just be watching something normal and go, what? They're like, whatever.
They didn't even blink. For them, it's violence. It's like if somebody gets blown away on the screen, they're like, oh, that was and in America, we're like. What? It's just some squibs and some blood. But oh my God,
violence. And and I personally, I'm kind of, I'm raised in America, so I have the sensibilities. But that was kind of the big thing with saving the world. My comics prior did not work well with American sensibilities, because it was that thing. I just had an idea, so I drew it, and whatever. And it's probably good that they never got widespread, because I could have gotten in trouble. But I just draw anything and everything. But I did grow up on a lot of European comics and some Japanese.
It's funny that you say you could get in trouble for what you would write and draw, because I lived through the era of Boiled Angel.
Yeah.
And if you for those not familiar with the title Boiled Angel, and I'm totally skipping on the creator's name, but Boiled Angel was so graphic that the courts prohibited this creator from drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And it
That's
created
real.
Such an outrage in the comic book community. And now, if you draw something bigger than a C cup on a woman in a t-shirt, the same people who were fighting tooth and nail for this guy to, have his right to draw will
same people
fight tooth and nail to take away yours.
And I think that's a very, very important point. You're talking about Michael Diana.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, people don't understand. This guy was arrested and thrown in jail for drawing a comic book, and then banned from drawing comic books in the state of New York. So he moved, and he works to this day, drawing his satire and stuff like that, and I loved his artwork because it was just so over the top, but it was not meant to be lascivious in any way. If you think that was sexy, you are demented, because
it was pencils on paper. It was not photography, people.
Right. Yeah. And he's not a traditional artist, right? He's he uses some skill to draw and just does it, but he's not like drawing this photorealistic Jim Lee stuff. He's a cartoonist, and he photocopied these things. That's what he got arrested for, was a comic he photocopied. And but they were trying to make an example of him. But you are right. The same people who defended him and kept him from going to jail have turned and become the enemy.
Yep.
And to some degree, the people who were trying to put him in prison are now defending artistic rights. And that becomes very dangerous, because because we've slipped. Artistic freedom has become slipping, because when 90s liberals are defending artistic freedom, you don't expect them to turn on you. You trust them. And George Carlin said this. Political people love to quote George Carlin, but always just little segments. It's like, no. He didn't like anybody. He thought humans were stupid. But he said, he always expected censorship from the right. It surprised him when it came from the left. And that's what scared him. Because when you expect something, you go, that's just how it is. Evangelicals and stuff. They didn't like Marilyn Manson, whatever. But you expect it, and that's not super threatening. It's a little scary when Michael Gianna went to jail, but still,
totalitarianism.
But when all of a sudden it's on you, that's dangerous, because you have to hold both sides accountable for what they did at what time, because they will switch again. This switching side is a thing of society that has been happening since the beginning of time. It's how we have the same art, why we're fighting the same artistic fight in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, we were fighting year zero, you know?
The difference is that with Michael Diana,
mm-hmm.
in order to fight his censorship, you had a process. You had a judge. You had a superior judge. You had an appellate judge. You had lawyers. You had names involved. And you could say, you could appeal to this judge for this judge's decision. And it was, you knew who it was that had come down on everything. Today, you have this faceless anonymous
mm-hmm.
that just tentacles out into every aspect of the industry with whispers of
mm-hmm.
stuff. So to get other people to speak out saying, I don't like this, and we're going to, cancel it.
And, it's a little different. For instance, I would say Michael Diana was an underground comic book artist. And it scared me, because at the time I was doing similar stuff. He was that deal. I was doing black and white photocopy comics that were very visceral and ugly. And so that was scary to know that. And I was in the Bible Belt. He was in freaking New York City.
Yeah.
I was in Oklahoma. And I was like, "Goo." Funny, I've never had any trouble ever. But there is the deal. He wasn't working for Marvel or DC. I think the reason it's so shocking of cancel culture today is because we thought we fixed it. It's why everybody's getting trouble. We thought things were different. You look at 2000 to 2010, 2014 even. It went on a long time. Being offensive was just fun. Yeah. Everybody did it. James Gunn did it, as we all know. And the guy that was the elongated man just got fired because why? He acted like everybody else did from 2000 to 2014. And the reason we only hear about 2010 to 2014 is that's when Twitter started. And so it was cataloged. Now, we know that Matt Stone and Trey Parker did those jokes because they're on a TV show. And there is some examples of that where you go, how is Marilyn Manson not canceled in 2020? He's freaking bulletproof. The dude's releasing albums. Why? Where to begin? He never pretended to give a crap. And so he was banned from my state. And so, that's That is one, Dale, where you have, it's the difference. I would be almost more afraid today if it was government. That's what made the 90s scary. This was prison. This wasn't being canceled on Twitter. And that Michael Diana was never going to work at DC Marvel. That he would have been canceled long before he ever got close to that. But that early 2000s to when progressivism was continuing in a very traditionally liberal direction in which let people draw and write and say what they want. Ultimate freedom. And when that stopped, that was weird. And it was society, no government. There's no real government intervention at all. And so you can't even protect yourself because the First Amendment protects you from the government, not your fellow man.
Right.
And your fellow man are turning against you, which is, again, isn't new. It's new from who it's coming from. Because I, again, lived in the Bible Belt. The comics I drew and stuff were not conducive to that society, and they canceled you in the 90s, and the 80s, the 70s, 60s, the 50s. They call you a communist and throw you in jail. Yep. And so this cancel culture is not new. The new thing is it's not the uptight guys in a suit and tie saying, what you did is terrible, and I just don't understand what's going through your kid's head. It's
it's not a million moms sitting there saying, Mighty Mouse just sniffed a poppy flower. That's where opium comes from.
It's not really the moms groups. It's not the people, it's not the evangelical Christians. It's not the moms groups. It's not all these. It's these people. Now, arguably, they sound a lot like Tipper Gore. And I'm a history buff. And so it really angers me when people speak without a knowledge of history, because no, it would be wrong to say, oh, the dang conservatives were always the ones. No, progressives. And our politics is far more complicated. We have two parties that don't mean nothing, but we got a lot of ideologies, and that we got to be careful of, because ideology is traditionally never a friend of artists, ever, because it's a mind think, which is just unartistic. And so, they were Democrats. They were progressive Democrats. And they said, we're progressive. We hate rap music and rock music and all art. And it's like, what part of? But they weren't liberal. Liberal is different than a progressive. They have nothing in common. They might vote because America's so weird and only has two frickin' parties. They might join. But I mean, you see the same thing on conservatives where you got a guy with a tattoo of a rainbow swastika on his forehead and a mohawk, and he's like, I'm a conservative. It's like, oh, really? I live with conservatives. None of them have a rainbow mohawk.
And it was I always saw conservative book banners in fiction.
Yeah.
Like you watch Footloose and you're like, oh, Slaughterhouse-Five, that's a great book. That book there you don't want to read. I only ever saw them in real life from progressives. Little Black Sambo, you find copies of that and burn it. Dr. Doolittle, no, that we can't allow that. Huckleberry Finn, my God.
Now, I live in Oklahoma. To be fair, I saw some horrendous freaking stuff. My grandma, now it's evangelicals. They're conservative, but
they were burning records at one point, Kiss albums and stuff.
My grandma, she was my cousin lived with them. We lived with my grandparents. We had lots of He-Man action figures. He had tons of them. He was watching He-Man, and He-Man said, I am the master of the universe.
Oh yeah.
She took all of his toys, put them in a metal barrel outside, and made him watch as she burned them.
Oh boy.
Now I saw a lot of that. So I have sympathy for nobody about anything.
I grew up in an evangelical household, United Pentecostal growing up. So, I'm still recovering. But I remember there was the campaign across the nation with evangelicals, the moral majority. They were going to boycott Southland, which was, 7-Elevens, because of the pornography sales.
Right.
And I was with our pastor. I was like 14, 15, I guess, at the time. And I said, hey, are we going to, are we going to be marching outside the 7-Eleven in our town here? Are we going to be joining this thing? He's like, absolutely not, which surprised me because, UPC was pretty much as evangelical as you could get, apostolic wise. And he said, what nobody seems to understand is that there is a lot of violence and there's a lot of sex in the Bible. And as soon as you give people a platform where they have a precedent for being able to take something off the market and not be able to sell it, then it's just a matter of time before they turn on us.
Right. And that's ironic. and I actually had no trouble with like preachers and stuff like that, the actual people, and we're seeing this today to where they're kind of like, they feel like they've lost control. And it's always, it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with humans. When they herd up, they like to control, and they want to control so bad.
Yeah.
And the modern problem is hipsters. We knew hipsters were going to be a freaking problem. And now, now it's who can be offended by the weirdest thing. Now, there's some benefit to that in crowdfunding. Everybody pretending like, yeah, I see y'all fishing for SJW outrage. They cannot be outraged by me, and I have no idea why. And I would freaking love it, because you get like 100,000 retweets and your comic makes $20,000 freaking dollars. I'm sitting here going, I made 3,000, but I can't offend people for some odd reason. Which
you got to be hated by all the right people in order to get the revenge money.
But and I think there is. J. Scott Campbell he disappeared. The guy was from the 90s. He had the second they started going, where's her organs? All of a sudden, that dude came back big time.
The vengeance, yeah.
He's bigger now than he was when he was doing Gen 13. And their outrage actually launched him back into a full-time career at Marvel, which then kicked them into the top 10. You look at the top 10, and it's so obvious.
And he's only doing covers.
Yeah, just the covers. It's so obvious what's happening. And the industry's sitting there like their finger up their nose, like, why'd that happen? It's like, because of those covers. And it was comics. If it was X-Men, you'd go, well, X-Men is popular and Spider-Man's popular.
Yeah.
Invisible Woman #1. No, there is no way that comic got into the top 10 just because people, I'm a huge Invisible Woman fan. Said nobody ever. And there was tons of those. Spider-Woman, top 10. And I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Vampirilla, no. That comic, for one thing, it wasn't good. It was bad. But the covers were marvelous. And I'll tell you, I got like 10 of them. I bought a bunch of those variant covers, and I loved it because I'm a Vampirilla fan from the 60s. But the 60s comic,
magazines.
And I collected a lot in the 90s. But anyway.
I'm not even a fan of the Priest stories, the Christopher Priest stuff. I was like really looking forward to that. And I tried the first couple of issues. I'm like, I'm not getting a sequential story out of this at all.
I've never read any Priest comic before Vampirilla, and I heard everybody saying, oh boy, this guy, he's great. And so I was super excited because I was really been wanting Vampirilla to get back up on her feet, because I mean, even in the 90s it was, the Vengeance of Vampirilla. It was okay. My God, my hair's going early. This way. There we go. I'm looking at the video trying to comb my hair sideways.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Backwards. So anyways, so I was super excited, and I got like 5 or 6 variants and all this stuff, store exclusives. I was super hyped about it, and I got it in and read it, and I was like, wow, this is terrible. Yep. It is terrible. It isn't, and I am very, very forgiving. I will say, well, it wasn't for me, or, this or that. It was terrible. It was embarrassing to read. It made no sense. It was mocking the IP, like he hated Vampirilla and is just going to say that she was an idiot. But it even didn't make sense like that. I would be like, okay, well, you better make it funny.
I couldn't figure out the psychiatrist. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're like, in one panel, you're talking like you're Harvard educated, which you should
Right.
be because you're a psychiatrist. And the second, you're this folksy Uncle Remus sitting on the front porch. I'm like, what the hell?
Exactly. It made no sense. And so I was like, and okay, I posted a review thinking, who cares? I'm TonicMole. I'm nobody. Dynamite cared. So they retweeted. They commented, oh, well, I hope you like the next issue or something. I forgot they followed me because of that previous story. So anyways, I was like, oh my God, it was embarrassing then because I rarely say something negative because I don't want anybody to read it. But this, I thought nobody would ever see it. It's Vampirilla, who cares? But then they did, and I was like, go. So anyways, I got the second and third issue or something, and I was like, no, this is bad. For one thing, that artist is tracing something. I know tracing when I see it. He's tracing the whole thing, like CG models or something, and then he just traces them. It looks weird. You can tell when they do that because even a good artist,
a dynamism.
Yeah, even a great artist tracing, they forget to do things. It's a little bit of the weighting of the lines because they can't ignore that what's happening, what they're tracing. Yeah. And it has this tone. Well, that's what it looked like to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't look. Everything looked stiff and bad, and then the script didn't make no sense. That was very upsetting to me. But then a bunch of people said this is amazing. I was like, oh, whatever. I don't know then.
Clay Mann does that for me. I think he traces because everything in Heroes in Crisis, I looked at that. I was like, that's top-notch draftsmanship.
It is.
But those are posed mannequins.
He's totally tracing, and it's so good.
There's no life in the eyes.
No. And I read that's what you just said. Heroes in Crisis. I read it, and because at the time I was kind of enjoying Tom King type stuff. Some of his Batman, and but I read that and I was like, the art's kind of neat, but yeah, the more I watched of him, the more I was like, that dude's tracing. But for one thing, if your dimensions stay 100% accurate, like the head is always there's some people that are that good. Adam Hughes maybe. But Adam Hughes ain't tracing because, he does his cover art, but his interior art is a little simplified because it's interior art. But it's so uniquely Adam Hughes that if he's tracing, he's having to build custom CG models, and that's impressive in itself.
Every single panel of Batgirl in Heroes in Crisis, she looked bored.
Yeah.
And the dialogue didn't, because it was like, even Harley Quinn is out there half murdering Booster Gold, and she's like, Harley, no killing. And there was no outrage, no emotion, no nothing from her. She just walked stiffly everywhere. Sat against the wall.
Now,
not cool.
I had a big fight with Eric Larson, I think. Because I told him,
congratulations.
And I told him, hey, if the industry wants to get ahead, you can't do 20 pages. Why even bother? You can't tell a story in 20 pages. It's not worth $3.99. And that page print, they're full of crap. It don't cost. It costs more to do 20-page issues than it is to do a 40 in a way, because the more pages you do, the less per page you're spending to have it printed. It's cheaper to do 40 pages. Now they have to pay the people to do them, but they're paying them peanuts to be fair. These guys are barely making living wages, which is ironic because that's a big thing they like to talk about. It's like, well, you're getting paid terrible. I'm pretty certain I pay people more than DC and Marvel does. But so anyways, I said, you have to do more than, for one thing, that's not normal. They act like 20 pages is normal, but it's not normal anywhere else. A Ninja Turtle comic was 40 pages. Most underground comics are 32. 32 is really, that's it. That's a perfect number. And you might have one of those as letters to the editor, but you're doing basically a 30-page story, and then you have 1 or 2 extra pages. They do 19, 18, and then it's all ads, just ads out there, which you would think would pay for the print. They could give those away for free. It teased me off. Anyways, he said that's impossible. It is impossible for an art team to produce more than that monthly. And I said, bullshit. I could do 32 pages a month if that was my job. No problem. No problem at all. And then my first comic was 32 pages, and then I did like an 8-page story that was for the other one. And I put them all together. And then I just kind of timed myself and see if I could do it. And I did 40 pages. That was issue number 2 within 30 days. And it was hard, but then again, I work full-time 40 hours a week at a normal job.
So you weren't doing this 8 hours a day. You were doing this after the 8 hours a day.
When I was supposed to be sleeping. And my job ain't easy. I run a tire shop. I was fixing semi-tires all day for 8 hours. And then I'd go home and drag myself home, get out my iPad, and I start drawing. And I didn't pencil. I didn't just ink. I didn't just letter. I did the whole freaking thing. Now I don't do color because I don't like color. But so
it doesn't work for your style.
Yeah, but still, say I got a colorist. I hope he could keep up with me while I'm penciling, inking, and lettering. And there's certainly artists where you go, that's Adam Hughes, for instance. You don't go, work faster, you jerk. No, if he takes his time, whatever. But
I'm doing it. There's that fly. He's bothering me now.
He found you. But there's so few artists working that's the case. Joelle Jones, she does all her artwork and writes and stuff for like when she did Catwoman.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Her work is phenomenal and her writing is top notch. So fair enough, but that's so not the case 90% of the time. Most comics I pick up, I'm like, this art is really bad. It is designed to be fast, easy, and just.
I got into a bit of a debate. I think it might even been this morning, but because I was talking about the interior artwork of this comic book, and it was John Romita Jr. Doing action. I was like, this is not even pencil sketch. This is like roughs. This is layouts that somebody colored. And they were like, well, he's on a schedule. He's got to crank them out. He's, doing the quick shots here so that the other shots are better. Here's a really good shot. I'm like, okay, so you're saying the really good shot is the big panel of everyone sitting at a desk. That's what you want to see in the Superman comic is the newsroom. That's where the meat is. Not the scene with the 3 super characters flying towards the enemy with this out. That's nothing. We're just going to pass that one over.
And that's Superman. Yeah. Here's one deal. If you're working on a character that's been around for 80 years, that is globally known in almost every household on the planet, right? 6 billion people know who this character is. And you're like, I'm going to rush it.
Yeah.
Get the hell out. Get out. I wouldn't tolerate if an artist came and said, and this is saving the world, nobody gives a shit. But I would still go, well, no, if you don't care, go. There's people that like to do it. And but it baffles me. But it is John Romita Jr.
And that's
you wouldn't care at this point. Just another stupid Superman comic. And you see a lot of that. They're hoping to do something else. And it's more writers. Artists is more rare. It's almost every writer in comic books that gets the job is going, I'm just waiting for the movies or Netflix to call.
Yeah, which I can't get doing Superman.
Right. And it's like, then you drive down to Netflix and you go knock on their door and you stop slumming it in comic books. And that's one of the bigger problems in comics today. Nobody wants to be there. They're ashamed of what they're doing. They hate what they're doing. And so they're just
move aside and let those of us who love it get in there and
let people do it. And it, it's kind of, a little frustrating. And now, having said all this, I usually try not to say much about mainstream comics because, in my humble opinion, they've always kind of sucked a little. I mean, and I was talking to my wife about this. I said, it is a little baffling because, there's an argument of whether it's all propaganda now. I can't remember when it wasn't, but I'm also a collector. Being a collector is different than grading it on its artistic value. I love 40s comics, almost any of them. It don't matter what it is. I have this one. It's called Fire Hair. It's kind of a Jungle Girl idea, but a lady in the Wild West, and she's Irish or something, and she lives with this Indian tribe, and so she's with a bow and arrow, but she's red hair. So the idea is a red-haired wild lady living with Indians. But I love it. I love the comic, but I love all that 40s. And Batman, of course, is pretty definitive 40s and stuff. But when you look at 40s and 50s comics, a lot of them are propaganda. They're explicit. They're not even hiding it. They're like, buy war bonds, Yep. But it's cool historically. It's not as fun artistically to live through propaganda. But 100 years later, it's really cool. And, I think that is a thing with mainstream comics. They've never been astute. For me personally, I always felt that when it comes to mainstream comics, there was about 5 years where I respect them highly. And we're discounting Alan Moore. He doesn't, a lot of mainstream comics like you, but Alan Moore, yeah, you can't ride on his coattails forever. Yeah, he was amazing, but you're not.
They're gonna ride on his coattails again, because he did a treatment for DC Comics way back when that they did nothing with.
Yeah,
called Twilight of the Superheroes, and now DC has said, you know what? Dust that sucker off. We're gonna do that thing now. And like Mark Waid already took it and twisted it into Kingdom Come.
Yeah,
that was the basis for Kingdom Come was Twilight of the Superheroes. But now we're going to get that, and we'll see what it does.
I've never seen him spin on a guy so much, but be obsessed with him. But of course, him, Frank Miller, and stuff are freaks. They're not normal in mainstream comics. They snuck in somehow. And but 2000 to like 2005, I remember the craziest stuff coming out of Marvel, especially Marvel, which is weird because I never liked Marvel really. Growing up, it was all DC because I like DC because they let guys like Alan Moore do stuff. And I mean, even in the 90s, like Animal Man. I don't know if you read 90s Animal Man. It was crazy.
Oh, I did. Yeah, when Grant Morrison's a character in his own book.
Right.
That was never done, but that was done a lot, but it wasn't done the way he did it.
Yeah, and that's
Grant Morrison truly believes that writers are gods and that he's created this world that these guys live in.
Right. And see, with Grant Morrison, he was part of that 2000s deal, which is funny because he goes back forever, but everybody thinks he's new. Yeah. Have you heard this new guy, Grant Morrison? It's like, yeah, he's kind of old, but in the early 2000s, he had his the new X-Men. I know it's controversial for X-Men fans, but I wasn't an X-Men fan, so I loved it. But after that, Ecstatics, and then that merged into like X Factor.
Yeah.
With the Madman creator guy, and but there was tons of that stuff. Oh, NYX, which I freaking loved. That blew my mind, and really that short Marvel era inspired a lot. Where I was like, no, this works. You can do superheroes, traditional superheroes, but blow your mind with them. It doesn't have to be Batman and Superman punching a big monster thing. It can be intelligent stuff. And it was really that era of Marvel that really inspired me. But other than that, when I grew up, it was selling Twinkies and action figures. It wasn't super in-depth, But as a young kid, I loved it. And I do respect that. I respect children's entertainment, very much. I love going to like a movie like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, I love Sonic the Hedgehog. I thought it was a fun trip out.
Yeah, super fun. And
I want to say, jump in here and say that I've done absolutely nothing for you tonight.
that's okay.
So the record holds. I just refreshed the screen. So I retain my title as the least watched, clout thirstiest channel on the internet. But it's been fun. And I'm going to have to bring it to a close here soon. But I'm going to tell everybody watching the replay because you're going to see the tweet that I'm going to put out later tonight and again tomorrow, telling you all that this conversation took place and that you should come watch it. Click that link, get out there, and get yourself a copy of Lily, and I almost said Leela, and because it was hard, I got Wepwawet and Lily merged together. Lily and Wepwawet, get yourself a copy of that. It's not that far left to funding, so it's
close.
It's very close, and you're going to get the stretch. The stretch goals are already.
We're doing it.
You're getting the stretch goals. So
if you order a freaking comic, I'll send you everything.
So get in there and get those things. That's no reason not to. And if you look a little further down in the description, past that link, click that one first, and then read down further. You will find a link to Amazon where Critical Blast's latest publication, The Devil You Know, is available. This is 370 pages, 20 different short stories by 20 different authors, all about encounters with the devil. And it runs the gamut from comedy to horror, from past, present to future, sci-fi, fantasy, fairies. Everyone has their own different take on how this meeting could take place. So you're going to find something in there you like, and for my money, you're going to find 20 somethings in there that you like. So we encourage you to check that out. It is available on Kindle, but nobody can sign a Kindle, so I always get paper. So
hey, Monk needs some parting words.
Monk needs some parting words. We let him have 10 words in the middle of this 2-hour stream here.
I talk a lot. I knew even if he wanted to talk, I would be talking too much.
What should I say?
Well, that's something there.
That's something there. Gosh, I don't know.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here and listening through the live stream studio. Are you going to be doing any future work beyond this? I mean, where are we going to see your work on what campaigns after this? Where do we go put money?
I have something lined up, I think, with Sporkman guys. I have several campaigns still going. I have the Lost Pages, obviously. I do work with the Rags guys. I'm not actually doing anything for the campaign, but I have some stuff coming up for them. And that's as far as I have planned right now.
All right. Well, we'll just keep a watch for you on the internet. Can people reach out to you for commissions, or do you encourage that, or is that?
I try not to announce it openly, so I don't get too many.
Sure.
Just because I work full time, my schedule books up really quickly.
I can imagine. You ever do conventions, or when it's not a COVID crisis and they actually have them? Do you ever go and sit at a table and do sketches and sign stuff?
I haven't yet. Maybe once this is over, I will do some.
We were literally, me and Monk and I think Sizzle and maybe Doug Garrett, we were talking. We were like, let's do it. We're buying a table. And I was like, I'll pay for it. And we were ready because Kansas City or Dallas or something. And it was like 2 days before the pandemic exploded. And we were like, well, I guess not.
Guess not. And it's like, I still ordered books. I've got, copies of The Devil You Know. I've got copies of all 3 of my Destroyer books. I'm ready for my convention, which is in October. And guess what? Here in Illinois, they said, yep, we're not even going to be open in October. And I'm like, it's June.
Yeah.
Like, nope, we're not opening in October.
I tell you what, I wasn't taking no risk because I had one that was just 30 minutes away in August 3rd.
13 miles for me.
Yeah, it was about that. And I was like, okay, that'll be cool. My first, just to do a little convention. And I was like, we'll see how the thing goes. And when it was approaching, I was like, no, that's stupid. For one thing, what psychopaths are going to be, in this deal? And so I ended up passing because, well, for one thing, it's like $75, which isn't much. But, I was like, no, nobody's going to show up to this thing. For one thing, it's a small convention to begin with during the pandemic. And I was like, no, I ain't even going to mess with it. So I ended up bowing out. And, but yeah, the big plans for 2021, if things go, which everything looks like it'll be fine.
You should hit Planet Comic-Con for your area.
Well, yeah, see, I want to hit, what is that? Is that Dallas?
That's Kansas City.
Kansas City and Dallas. If they're at the same time, it depends who's going, because there's a lot of people I've been wanting to talk to that I talk to online constantly, like Terry Moore and Jimmy Palmiotti and all this. I talk to them all the freaking time. Never met him because I never leave my house. And so, that was one big thing that I was hoping to, to be able to meet some people that I talk to a lot. And, but I'm leaning Kansas City, definitely. So almost guaranteed Kansas City when it comes around next year, if it happens. And that will decide. If they do Dallas and Kansas City, I'll be there. If they don't, wait longer.
All right. Well, Tonic, Monk, it's been a pleasure having you both on the stream here. Gosh, we spent 2 hours talking comics. That's a night well spent for me. Waste of time for you guys because it made you no sales.
I loved it.
Well, I can do this all the time, but if you're not worried about making money, then I can spend hours on the live stream.
If I was worried about making money, I'd do something different.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be writing for a living. But keep an eye on the DMs and on the tweets because about once a week we do the open mic thing, and that's always a crapshoot. I never know if I'm going to get invaded by Star Wars guys or have two people on to try to kill each other. I'm like, but, so far I keep doing it. So, gentlemen, appreciate you being here. We're going to end the stream now, and best of luck with Lily and Wepwawet. I hope to. I can't wait to see my copy. I'm going to say that because I'm going to. So
coming in hot.
Good night, everybody. Hi. Thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video. We hope you had a blast.